Alright, when it comes to assembling your flute, one of the most important aspects typically to start with is the case, because this case is a bad example, unfortunately. This is a replacement case, but most flutes, when you get them with the case, the brand name of the instrument is going to be usually marked somewhere in one of the corners on one side. If you flip it over to the other side, there's not going to be anything there. In the case of this flute, there's nothing on either side of the case, because this is not the original case that came with this flute. The case eventually broke on this flute and we got a new case, but the case has no brand name on it. So, but when you get your flute, chances are it's going to have the brand name on one side and nothing on the other. And that's there on purpose to help you remember which side is the top side of the case. When you open the case correctly, in this case, you see this flute's a little bit old here. Everything fits into where it's supposed to. If I was to open this case upside down, which I'm not actually going to do in front of you, but if I were to open this one upside down and lift this up, everything falls out and lays in there. We don't want the stuff to fall out, so that's why that is the way it is. For this reason, you'll hear other people say, and I will also back this up, that you should always open your case on the floor or on a table or a desk, right? On the floor, on a table, on a desk is where you want to do this. Not on your lap, because you are likely to get distracted while it is on your lap, and this doesn't grip all that well to cloth. So if it's on your knees and then you twitch a little bit, it slides right off your knees and crashes to the floor. Now that it's unlatched, everything falls out and that crashes to the floor as well. So that is not a good thing. So that is why you always want to do this on a table or on the floor. And then as you get older and a little bit more coordinated, you might consider doing it on your knee very, very carefully, but generally you don't want to do that. So here are your three parts of your flute. And yes, I know that this camera is a little bit not showing everything very well. There we go. A little bit better. Alright, so you can see here we have our three parts: the head joint, the foot joint, and the body. The head joint is the top, the foot joint goes on the bottom, the body goes in the middle. Now, modern flutes, newer flutes, if you get a new flute, especially I think a Jupiter, has the nice aspect of having markings on it that you know where everything is supposed to line up. But unfortunately, a lot of flutes do not have that, and so you're going to have to learn how to line these up correctly. When you grab your flute, when you grab the different parts of your flute, you want to grab them in such a way that you don't run the risk of snapping any of this stuff. All of this stuff can be snapped off of your flute surprisingly easy. You'd be surprised just how easy it is for a lot of this stuff to come off of your instrument. That includes the lip plate on the head joint right here. If you grab it right here and you start manipulating like this, you can actually break this completely off of the flute. I've actually seen it happen. So this is when you want to grab it wherever you can, to where you're not actually messing with any of the key work. In this case, I'm grabbing right here, okay, and I'm just barely touching the key work down here, but I can slide my hand up a little bit further and not touch that key work. So all of this key work is very fragile, very easy to bend, and we want to avoid that as much as possible. When it comes to grabbing the foot joint, that's a little less possible, just because it's really hard to grab it in such a way where you're not grabbing something. So you want your palm on the side where there's less amount of key work, and you have your fingers kind of grab the keys, or just kind of like press down on the keys gently, and that holds them down. And meanwhile, the bigger part of your hand is not messing with any of that. Let's start with the head joint into the body. Okay, once again, when you grab the body, you want to be grabbing it in the areas where there's not a lot of key work. Same with the head joint. You want to be grabbing this where there's not a lot of work. And it pretty much just slides in. There's nothing really special about this. Now, you'll see there's this dull area. This is very exaggerated on this flute, but you have the dull versus the shiny. Generally speaking, you don't want to cover up the dull 100%. You want some of the shiny to be peeking out. How much? Half a centimeter to 3/4 of a centimeter, roughly, or 1/4 of an inch. Okay, is kind of a good idea. Then you say, well, how do I know that this is lined up correctly? You want to make sure that this hole is kind of lined up with all of these keys down here. So you generally kind of take a look at that. This is kind of, again, with this camera, a little bit tough to see, but I think this needs to be twisted out just a little bit more. You want this hole to be lined up with the key work down here. Alright, now we get into a little bit more of a tricky area here, and that is attaching the foot. Why is this tricky? Because this does not line up any way in which you think. Alright, so the foot, again, I'm going to grab the foot primarily, holding it so that my thumb is on these keys right here, and most of my palm is on the shiny part down here. I'm going to gently twist the foot on. And generally speaking, your flute does not need a lot of lubrication, by the way. You really don't need much cork grease, if any at all. You just take these and give these a good wipe every now and then. They'll be alright. Alright. Now, your first instinct is to want to line it up like this. That makes sense, right? You got this long bar, and now this is lined up, and you got all of these keys, and it looks like they're lined up. This is wrong. Okay, you say, well, okay, what about if I line up all the keys like this? This is clearly where my pinky goes, and here's where all of my other fingers go, and well, and this kind of lines these up with this, and that makes sense, right? This is also wrong. And the reason why, if I turn the flute around, it'll be a little bit more obvious. Okay, your right hand is going to go here, and your three fingers are going to go onto that spot right here. Notice that your pinky is considerably shorter than the rest of your fingers. How are you supposed to reach that? Okay, so both of those options, if I turn this back again, this now puts the pinky key way too far low for you in order for you to reach these keys correctly, and now your wrist has to do some funny things to get down here. This puts it the other way, puts it too far away. So what you actually do is you line this particular bar not up with this bar, but you point it down the middle of all of these keys right here. And what that does is that puts this the right length away from your fingertips. If your hand is correctly positioned, okay, you have these three fingers on these keys right here, and this pinky key is now reachable. That is the correct way. Disassembly is exactly the same opposite as assembly. You're going to grasp here, twist gently. Sorry, I want to make sure I'm actually in the camera. Twist gently, and they'll come apart. Grasp here and here, twist gently, and flute comes apart. You want to make sure you're laying them correctly in the case. Every case is a little bit different. Generally speaking, you look for a spot in the case that's very clearly made for this. That's what you're looking for. Close the case and make sure it's latched, and you're good to go. We'll talk about care and cleaning in a later video.